We continue now with our conversation with Professor Matthew Spalding, Hillsdale College, but it's the graduate program here in Washington, D.C., specifically for master's degree in government. I want to start there, actually.
Okay.
A lot of people think of Hillsdale and the beautiful campus in Michigan, beautiful, my home state. But your D.C. operation is pretty impressive, right on Capitol Hill. When did it begin, and what is the purpose of this graduate program?
Well, Hillsdale's been sending students to Washington, D.C. since the 1970s, our undergraduates. We've had a physical presence for about 10 or 12 years, and a graduate school just for a couple of years. But think of Hillsdale College as the main college is a nuclear reactor, if you will. It's kind of exploding onto the scene and radiating all this energy. That's very much what we're doing in Washington, D.C. It's our first remote campus here. Why here? Well, the Hillsdale College, which is an old college, it's a liberal arts college, but it's really meant to uphold civil and religious liberty. Its history is intertwined with the Constitution and American history. It's very natural for us, indeed, a specific intention to bring that teaching to Washington, D.C., right in the middle of this.
Belly of the beast.
And that has something to do with immediate things, what's going on right now, but a deeper sense of what we're losing, what we're neglecting as a country. That deeper philosophical grounding in America's founding, having to do with the permanent truths of the laws of nature, nature's God, which should guide us in the broadest sense of the term. But also a very practical thing, which we think we've largely lost as well, which is the kind of prudential thinking in politics that's really necessary. The prudential thinking you see in, say, the case of a Lincoln or the founders themselves,
sure,
or a Churchill. We don't think that way anymore. Politics is largely guided by expertise. This kind of comes out of the progressive movement in the sense that only those who know better should guide our politics
the elite
and rule us.
Few with the right letters after
This
their
is
name.
the administrative state. This is the bureaucracy. Call it what you will. This is what's now dominating our educational systems more and more, especially in the K through 12 system. We believe that's first of all, that's a denial of our ability to govern ourselves. That really attacks the very essence of what constitutional government is. But even more importantly, it's irrational in its way. It's not philosophically grounded. It denies the possibility of individuals, you, me, a parent, a person in the voting booth, a person thinking about their future.
Right.
It denies their agency in making those kinds of decisions. The modern liberalism, the left, progressive, whatever you want to call it, is largely built on the notion that we shouldn't rule ourselves. We are to be ruled.
Right.
And that's now pervasive in many aspects of our government, and it's now starting to trickle down because I think of this new energy, if you will, on the left, into a lot of our cultural institutions where it wasn't before, chief among them in education.
Yeah. So in other words, here in Washington, D.C., if you want to advance your career as either a K Street lawyer or somebody who works in one of the think tanks or what have you, or in policy on Capitol Hill, you need to get one of these advanced degrees. That's what helps you, advance. And your choices are really George Washington University, Georgetown, American University.
There are actually a lot of them, and they're basically a dime a dozen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they all and you all end up learning the same thing from the same perspective.
And they teach the wrong thing.
Yeah.
We will not at our graduate school ever offer a course saying Healthcare 101, a particular policy question. For one thing, you can learn that on your own. The other thing is it's passing. That will change. That's not the more important things. What you need to do is to learn how to think.
Yeah.
And the question is, how did the great statesmen of the past learn how to think? You study a lot of history. You study some political thought and some literature. You study institutions like the legislature, the executive, the courts, jurisprudence. And you learn to apply those ideas. And this is what conservatism actually is supposed to be, the idea that you're conserving something. What are the main principles of that? And then how do those principles apply in today's environment? No one in the educational institution, and this is generally true in the academy except for very few places, Hillsdale being the primary one in my opinion, we don't teach students how to think anymore. the academy is really dominated by this notion of expertise.
Yeah.
The academy and most of our K through 12 institutions, they don't teach you how to think, they want to teach you what to think.
Well,
they're very ideologically focused to get across a certain set of information, which is increasingly ideologically moving to the left.
Yeah, and we're seeing it manifest, if we can bring it back now to the local public school systems, where they're implementing these policies now that literally do say that the professional educators, the teachers, the administrators, they know better about the welfare of a young child than that child's own parents. And it's this whole idea of expertise. Well, how would you know about your child's, gender identity, or how would you know about the best way that your child can socially interact with other kids? You're just a parent, you're not a professional educator, you don't have the right degree. And somehow parents, many of them, up until very recently, they were buying into that. What do I know? I'm not an expert. My God, you're the kid's parents.
Right. Yeah, it's a radical idea, isn't it?
Right.
Well, a couple of things. One is, I think we need to look at the K through 12 system especially as really a model of what has kind of become with American politics. It's becoming increasingly professionalized, and it's driven by this expertise argument. Let me give you one statistic just to show that I'm a political scientist. If you look at the growth of students, of teachers, and of administrators over the last 20 years, students and teachers in the K through 12 system have roughly grown and expanded by about 8%. Administrators has grown by about 85 to 90%.
Get out of town.
And this is information from the Department of Education.
Wow.
That is, you really see the shift that's going on here. It's the administrators that is increasing the problem. That is, the people who spend zero time in the classroom.
Right.
They're professionally trained experts about running education. Education, K through 12 level especially, is a cooperative relationship between teachers, parents, and students. That's the way it was when I grew up. That's the way it historically always is. And the parents in the driver's seat. Ask yourself one simple question. Who's responsible for the child?
Yeah.
The problem is that we're in a debate. See, the experts or administrators are increasingly arguing that they're responsible for the child.
Right.
They can make those decisions. That is a radical flipping upside down of the whole equation. Yeah. And any conversation about education has to begin with this relationship between the parent and the child. We talk about nature. It's in the nature of things. Nature comes from the word for birth, nativity, beginnings. A parent has a responsibility over their children precisely because a child, unlike, say, your dog or your cat, takes a while to develop and grow and to learn things. They take someone who knows them very well to develop them, their character, form them, to spend time with them. That's what parenting is all about. It takes someone who loves them. And traditionally, that was a relationship which then, when they went to school, the teacher respected and was teaching them in light of that superior relationship. That's now being pushed aside, and it's largely because of this argument, which grows out of the progressives, John Dewey, that whole sense of progressive education. It's been around for a long time, but we're now seeing it manifested in a way that's much more powerful. That the real relationship here is actually the one of expertise in bureaucrats educating the child.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? And now that we see this movement in K through 12, in government-run schools, state-run schools, and the advent of more aggressive school choice protocols and laws that are being put in place in some states, well, if the parents don't have a good choice, then choice isn't really that important. So how can we fix and move forward the choices these parents have for the education of their children? That's the question I'm going to ask Matthew Spalding. He's going to answer it for us because he's a professor. He's an expert and he knows these things. So we'll get to that next. In other words, how do we replicate what's going on at Hillsdale and replicate that in our own public school system? Can we do that? Should we do that? We'll get to that next. Keep it here. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.